few seconds have passed.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
Okay. I hit the live button now.
Okay, I'm gonna mute this and going in. Okay, so we're just making sure everything looks good for today's live stream and making sure everything is as smooth as it was last time, yesterday. Hopefully that will be the case. Let me just bring it up for the comments. If you guys have comments, feel free to ask questions or things as we're doing this live stream. Oh, I'm seeing myself on the live stream, so it looks like everything is good to go. And welcome to day 2 of this live stream. Got a lot of modifications and a lot to do today, so we'll get right into it. As far as the what we accomplished yesterday, day 1, so far we're maybe 2 hours in. So if you count an hour for building the armature and putting it on the stand and stuff, that took me about an hour. And then yesterday, during yesterday's live stream, we did an hour-long live stream that got us to this point where we have the primary forms of the head, the rib cage, and the pelvis in place roughly, and we've got the pose somewhere in the vicinity of where it's going to be, though it is a little bit off, and so we're going to make some of those adjustments right now. To do that, I took a video with the app, one of our sponsors, the DaVinci Eye app, which is a great resource, and you can find links for all of those resources in the description below. And so I just took a video. I'm going to pause this video. Pause. And I noticed that there were some things that were off. The arms a little bit off, and then the hands a little bit off as far as the pose. And then I also took a picture of a video of the reference from the side to align it with the reference. And again, that was with the DaVinci Eye app, and just super useful to be able to overlay the image of the reference with the sculpture and then check it. And again, when I was doing that, I was just about, the middle of the sculpture, so there's not too much distortion either way, and just checking, make sure everything looks good. So some of the things that I saw that need to be adjusted: this arm needs to kind of come up a little bit more like that, because it's a little bit more perpendicular. And then there were some other, let's see. And so that's looking a little bit better. Let me go to this other angle. And this one, there were a few more things that needed to be adjusted, because I noticed that for what I was doing, the pelvis and the rib cage are a little bit off, but they're more aligned in the reference. So I'm just going to kind of twist a little bit this way, just so that it's a little bit more accurate to the reference. That's looking a little bit better. And then I felt like the rib cage needed to come forward more, so I'm just kind of bending and pressing to have the rib cage come a little bit more forward. And so just making those adjustments so that we're ready to start. Today, what we're trying to accomplish is to get most of the mass onto the sculpture. So yesterday somebody was asking, why are you going so slow, like building it up so skinny? And that's because it is a lot easier when you're taking your time. Slow is fast when it comes to sculpture, slow and thoughtful. So really make sure that you get this stage down, the rough size of the sections of the body, the pose. Make sure that those are all in place before you start building up too much mass, because the more mass you have, the more difficult it is and the more time consuming to make the adjustments that you'll need to make as you're building out the forms of the sculpture. Let's see. I'm trying to see the comments. Let's do this. So right now I'm not seeing the comments, but it's probably just because I have the wrong settings. let's see. So let me quickly mention our sponsors. So we've got the DaVinci Eye app, which is the app that I use to take this reference. We got Pose Space, which is where these photos are from. And we are really appreciative of the sponsors. They contributed to the cash prize. Okay, here we go. So now I'm getting the the comments here in the description. So PoseSpace, great resource. That's where you can find the uncensored versions of these poses. Some people were asking about that. So if you'd like the uncensored versions, the poses are called Jenny 018 is this pose, the female pose, and then the male pose is Ben 015. I believe those are the names for those two poses, and you can get the full uncensored versions of those poses. If you're okay with the censored versions, those are up on the Proko channel, or the Proko page that goes over the competition, and that's the page that I send out when people sign up for my email list. So if you haven't signed up, there's a link in the pinned comment that goes over that has that information for the email list. So, and then Proko.com is a sponsor. Let's see. I'm just gonna start laying in the clay. And what I'm gonna do now that I've got the pose roughly in place, is I'm going to start to focus on the silhouette from the front view to start with. And let's see. And then also the head was a little bit in a different position, so I'm just kind of adjusting that a little bit. And it's nice to have, you can understand the figure a little bit better when you have the forms roughly in place. So that is helpful. So I'm just going to go ahead and start, and we're going to start with the safe areas. Those are areas between the primary forms of the body. Like all of this is safe area. I know that it'll need to be filled with something because she doesn't have a hole in her stomach. So we're going to go ahead and fill that in. Proko.com, an amazing resource if you're interested in drawing, painting, sculpting, of course. You can find courses on all of those things over at Proko.com. And I'm really grateful to be able to work with them. They have a great team, and Stan Prokopenko has done some amazing things with helping make high quality art courses accessible to people all over the world. So if you can, if you're interested in sculpting, you might consider getting the full figure sculpting fundamentals course over at proko.com/sculpture. Or if you want to learn about anatomy, you might get the anatomy course at proko.com/anatomy. There's just so many great courses for artists and art students. So I hope you'll take advantage. And there's also a lot of free content. So, this channel, the Proko 3D YouTube channel, all of the free videos go up on this channel. But then the main Proko channel obviously has a bunch of free content, and you can go and sign up with a free account and then just add a course to your page that you have over at Proko.com, and then you can just start learning from the free lessons if you can't afford to get the full courses just yet. So I felt like the rib cage, I want to keep things thin. So right now I'm thinking about sculpting the figure as if it was more emaciated or more thin than it actually is in reality, and I'm just kind of focusing on the outlines. So let's go ahead, and I'm kind of thinking, just like I did yesterday with the rib cage, where I built up a slice of clay along the center line. That's kind of what I'm thinking right now, except this time I'll be working from the side view and just kind of adding a wall of clay that comes out from the side to give an indication of those features, and build out the silhouette, the curves from the front view. And sometimes I might need to come over here a little bit more, because it's difficult to sculpt so that you guys can see while I'm making sure that I can see what I'm doing. But hopefully you guys can see what's going on. let's see. Let's go ahead. Yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. Welcome everybody that's watching this live. Obviously, there'll probably be a lot more people watching it afterwards. But we definitely appreciate all of those that are watching live and commenting and things. Somebody says, did you mention the clay that's okay to use for the competition? I wanted to use white air dry clay I purchased at a local pottery store. Would this be acceptable? Yeah, any type of clay is fine. So it does have to be traditional clay, so it can't be like it can't be 3D, it can't be digital sculpting, but any type of clay I am fine with you guys using. So whether it's polymer clay, epoxy clay, this is oil-based clay, a non-dry modeling clay, really any type of clay I'm fine with you guys using. Just make sure that it's a traditional type of clay, and that way, we can, and that it's it's the somewhere around 18 inches or 45 centimeters, give or take a little bit, about 1/4 life size. Those are the important things. Let's see. Another thing was this foot right here, the gesture on this foot. I was getting a little bit off, so I want to make sure that I capture that a little bit better. Kind of comes in and then pushes out, and the feet are really, really interesting. So I really want to make sure that the gesture is accurate when it comes to the feet. Like the hands, they're also pretty important. Let's see, and then this is kind of a safe area because I see that because her legs are crossed, there's no negative space inside that area, so I can go ahead and build this wall over, and then same thing with this leg. But you can see I'm thinking very two-dimensionally. I'm just taking one angle at a time. I'm not worrying about building up all the mass. We can do that in a sec once I get the roughed out outline. It's really easy to fill in the space between the two planes that we'll be building. But right now I'm just focusing on this one side plane, trying to get that accurate. And we can, like, once I get these planes in place, I could take the DaVinci Eye app and then check it again. I'm not going to do that just because I know that the proportions are about right and the pose is about right. So I like to use it during the beginning and then try to do as much as I can without it as I move on. Sometimes that might be a good idea. For some of you, it might be more helpful just to use it during every stage of the process. Check yourself, move on, check yourself. But this is just the way I like to work right now. Let's see. So, and I'm just trying to get an indication of the silhouette. And you can see when it's just this thin line of clay, I can make adjustments fairly quickly. There's kind of a little bit of a negative space right there. And I'm just looking at the negative space that's surrounding the figure, trying to get that accurate. There's a lot of safe area right here because there's the muscle of the pectoralis, which is coming up, wrapping around the shoulder. So I can just give some clay to represent that. And then also just the muscle and anatomy of the back. So I'm just coming, and I see that there's not all this negative space in the outline from the front view. So I can go ahead and come in and just add a wall of clay to say this is what's happening in that area. Let's see. Let me see if there's any other questions. So somebody's asking, hello, do I need exactly the model or just the pose? And can I do clothes? So you do have to use this pose. One of the judging criteria is, accuracy and accuracy to the model. So that is one of the judging criteria. With that said, I'm okay if you deviate a little bit from the reference. As far as adding clothes, I I any more than what's on the censored image. The issue with that is that I'm worried that people will use it just to hide the anatomy that they struggle with. So I'd say you can, but it won't help you. so you know, it's a figure sculpting course. You're welcome to sculpt like a bathing suit or something like that. That's what I did for censoring the images. But I do want to see that you're able to sculpt the figure. It's not a competition on drapery, so I don't want to see too much drapery. Hopefully that answers the question. But what I would do is I would sculpt it, you know, without adding too much drapery, and then once the competition's done, you've taken references, then you can add on the drapery, and that's a very common thing that traditional sculptors do when they're sculpting, because then they have, you know, the figure accurately portrayed when they start adding on drapery. Let's see, I'm gonna come, and I'm still just looking at the silhouette, building it up just one piece of clay at a time. Trying to focus on the high point. So where is the area where this hip comes out the farthest, and then round off from that point. So it's about at the area of the groin is where the widest point of the hip is on this side, and then it's pretty soft from what I'm seeing over here. But again, we want to be thin, so I want to make sure I'm not coming out too far. I want it to look like a thin version of the figure. Just a wall of clay. Here you can see just how thin. I'm just building a wall to represent the figure from one view. So taking it one step at a time, one view, one angle at a time. Let's see. Somebody's asking, is it better to sculpt when you're sitting or walking around the sculpture? Since I'm sitting when I sculpt, I usually have lower back problems. Would it be useful to walk around the sculpture? I do think that standing is a little bit more beneficial, just because you feel more active, like more energetic when you're standing. If I'm sitting, then I feel like that comes through a little bit in the sculpture. I don't know why that is, but I do think if you can be standing as you're sculpting, that generally that's preferable, because then also you can move back away from the sculpture, and that helps when you're trying to judge accuracy and things like that. It helps to be move a little bit back away from things. And here I'm seeing that as I'm building the outline here, that the box of the pelvis feels like it's shifting. So I just want to add a little bit of mass. The box of the pelvis was a little bit small, but I do want to keep that structure in place and maybe take away some from this side and then add some to that side. And that's going to move the center line. So I have to be aware of that, but I do feel like that was the right thing. But that just means we need to redraw the center line, and from the front, and then also from the back, just redrawing it. And then again on this side, moving over that box of the pelvis just by moving pieces of clay. I'm gonna take some off that side, add some to that side, and then scoot this center line just a little bit over. And so that's fine, but we do want to maintain the structure as we're building. We don't want to lose that structure that we built yesterday during the first session. Okay, let's go ahead. We're continuing. Maybe I need to speed things up a little bit just to make sure that we can get through what we need to do today. So I'm just going to take pieces of clay and build out that high point, for the calf right there. I have it like that. For you can't really see the knee. You can't really see this in part of the knee, but I know that the general gesture of the knee is going to push this in a little bit, so that it's kind of like a little bit of an S curve to it from the front view. And I can go ahead and fill in some of this inside area because I know that it'll need to be filled in eventually. And same thing with this side. Just filling in that space. So it's so much easier to sculpt the figure when you just focus on one plane at a time. Like doing it this way, I really like this method. You don't often see professional sculptors do have each step be as separated as what I'm doing, because generally they have a lot of experience and they just kind of understand the forms that I'm trying to get you guys to see as I'm sculpting. So just be aware that you know, you see sculptors like my friend Leroy Transfield. He just puts masses of clay, and he works so fast, builds everything up. But he just understands the figure because he sculpted it so many times that he doesn't need to go in and build an egg for the rib cage or a box for the pelvis. He just understands what those forms are like, and so he doesn't need to lay in all this structure. This is really for people that are starting out, that you haven't done your first 20 sculptures or whatever, so you don't know exactly where to go next. And so this is just a process to break things down. I'm going to come to this other side and fill in some of this negative space back here. So the way I'm doing it is just a way, and the way I've taught in the Figure Sculpting Fundamentals course, is just a way to break things down so that it's easier to approach the sculpture, and so that you can get a more accurate sculpture without having the loads of experience that's required to really understand the figure and be able to do things like sculpt from imagination. So I'm liking this better now. The knees, let me just add a little bit more mass for the knee over there. Let's see, this a little bit more rounded. Yeah, I'm liking this a little bit more. I can add the trapezius muscle and a little bit more of the thickness of the neck, so we still have plenty of space to build things. Okay, so I think that's about good. So here's where it's at right now, or that's good for this side. And now I'm going to move to the side view and build out the same thing I did here. I'm going to build out from the side view. But basically all I've done is done a pancake of clay, focusing on the outline right here. And then you can still see the structure of the egg of the rib cage, the box of the pelvis, the loomis head or simplified head, or not the loomis head, but this is more of a bodum block in for the head. And I can clean things up. And if you want, you can clean things up as you're going. That's not super necessary because all of this is going to be covered with more clay as we're going. But it is kind of nice to have, to be able to see cleanly each stage of the process. That is kind of a nice thing. Okay, I think I'm liking how that's coming along. Let's see. What is the size of the head unit to get the required 40 to 45 centimeters in height? I'm making the armature today, running a bit late starting. So let's see, I use the cranial unit system. I don't use the head unit system, but basically you just divide it by I think most people are like seven and a half heads. So you just divide the 45 centimeters by 7.5 to get the head unit. But I like cranial units. So for the cranial unit, it's about it's 11 that goes into the figure. 11 cranial units, which is the distance between, the widest point towards the back of the head. That's one cranial unit. And if that was a circle, there's going to be 2 units down to the clavicle, and then 3.5 units down to the greater trochanter. Then 3 units. The top of the leg is 3 units. Bottom of the leg is 3 units. The arm is 2 units from the elbow to the knuckles, and then 2 units down here. And then this is 2 units. So it's just a nice way to measure things. If you're going to use the cranial unit system, which is what I use, then I think it's 3. Let's see. So 45 divided by 11. So it's basically 4. It's basically 4 centimeters is going to be 1 cranial unit for doing this. Let's see, 4. And let me double check that. So we got 4 centimeters is about the width of the head. Yeah, that's about right. So 4 centimeters is 1 cranial unit. Might be a tiny bit less, but then you times that by 11. That's 44, and that's about where you want to be for the height. So if you have questions on that, go watch the videos on the Proko 3D YouTube channel that go over the Robert Beverly Hale cranial unit system and building wire armatures. Just search wire armatures, and then I'll show you that system and go over that and everything. Somebody says, did you forget my question about the DaVinci Eye app? Oh, somebody says, I downloaded today the DaVinci Eye app. It's really great. I use the smartphone, and it's quite small. Can I transfer it to my MacBook, and how? Yeah, you should be able to transfer it to an iPad. I was able to do it on the iPad. I don't know if it'll go to a MacBook though, because I haven't tried that. So you might reach out to the maker of it. Just if you go to the DaVinci Eye app, there's like a contact page, and you could ask that question. I think it's mostly for phones. So you might have to deal with that if you can't figure it out. But I was able to get it on my iPad. I don't know if the same would work for a MacBook. So yeah, I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that one. Okay. Somebody says I'm new and just starting out. Well, that's awesome. This is a great opportunity to start sculpting. I'm really excited, and there's people all over the world that are joining. So now I'm going to switch to this side view, and I'm going to do the same thing I did on that side. Take some clay, put it in place, and let's go ahead and get going with that. So now I like to do the legs just because they have a lot of gesture and movement to them. And this model looks like has pretty strong legs, and so has some thickness to the legs. Gonna come down and just build out the profile, the outline of the legs. That's what I'm looking at right now. And again, just like an outline from here, and then we'll fill in these areas. And it goes a lot easier if you work on the outlines first. Let's also do a little bit of the back of the leg. That's going to come back this way. So you can see I'm just building out that plane to say this is where the high point is, and then as I'm filling up these negative areas, that goes super quick. You can just put in clay. So I'm trying to take my time though with this, make sure that the farthest points out before it starts curving back are in roughly the right place, and getting the joints and things in roughly the right place, which can be hard because you're sculpting thinner, so you want to make sure that the heights are accurate. And let's see, then there's this is on this model, this front part of the leg looks to be pretty flat, or pretty just the high point is pretty flat. So I'm just going to go ahead and add that in. And then get the back of the calf going. High point for that. And you can see it's just adding a little bit of clay at a time, taking my time. I'm trying not to rush. I like working fast. I really enjoy sculpting, like seeing how fast I can get something done. But right now I'm consciously trying to say, okay, slow down, make sure that what you're putting in place is in the right place, that the clay is in the right place before I move on, because if I can do that, then I know that I won't have to redo as much work later on in the process. So we're a half an hour, so about half the way through. Today might go, we'll see. Today might go a little bit longer, just because I do want to get most of the mass in place. But I'll try to go for that 1 hour timeline or time frame. Let's do the same thing over here. So we might somewhere an hour and 15 minutes. I think that's a good amount of time for this, because I also want to see how much can I get done in a short amount of time. 5-6 hours. I want to see how far I can get by the end of these live streams on these first 5 days, just because that's kind of a fun challenge. But to do that, I know I have to get these things right before I move on, and I want to have something that I like what's going on by the time that I finish. So here, I can't really see this high point for this leg from this angle, so I'm going to go ahead and switch to the other side, to this angle right here. But that's kind of going to be right here. So that makes it kind of hard for you guys to see what's going on. Let's see. Boop. Okay, and that's a little bit easier to see, the high points and things. Now I'm just going to do the same thing that I did on the other leg. Build out that center line. And this one, I feel like there's quite a bit more mass underneath where the armature is. So you want to pay attention to that. Where is the mass going to be placed? And smoothen things if I need to. This one's the high point. It's a little bit higher right there. And the glute comes down. The muscle of the glute comes down, and then it transfers into those muscles of the back of the leg. And I'm just taking my time. Take your time. Don't rush anything. Let's see if we got any other. Somebody's saying I haven't been able to get pictures. I registered today. Let me I will put a link in the comments. Oh, whoops, where'd the comments go? So let me go and copy that link, and I'll put it in the comments, and this will be the page on Proko.com, copy link, where you can find where you can download the references for this project or this sculpture. And there's two options. There's the male pose and the female pose. I will put the link right here. And so that comment that I just put is the link to download the photos, the ones that I'm observing. These are the censored ones. Again, you can find the uncensored versions over at posebase.com, as well as many other great references. They're a great resource for sculptors. I really like it because I love this, that you're able to see the figure from different views. I messed up on some of these, so it like switches weirdly, but generally just how I ordered but generally you're just able to turn the sculpture around, go to the angle that you're observing, and then build out the sculpture from that angle. So I'm just coming here, doing the calf muscle. and that's quite strong. Calf muscle here. And then transferring to the foot. I'm going to remove some clay around the foot because, again, we want everything to be thin at this point, because building the figure by adding these pieces of clay just so much easier than using a tool to remove things. I might not even get to using tools. We'll see how far I get in the sculpture, but most of the sculpture you should be able to do just by hand, especially when you're working this size. Your hands are the fastest tool that you have and the best tool that you have. You should use them more than any other tool when you're adding mass to the sculpture. Let's see. Because tools are for slowing you down. They're for, it's like a way to tell yourself, okay, slow down, be more careful, take a little bit more time to consider exactly what you're doing to the sculpture and where the clay is, how you're moving clay around. That's what tools are for. So that's looking pretty good right there. Let's go ahead and come back to this other side over here. Let me show you guys what it's looking like at this point. You can see those lines of clay where I'm building out the figure. Slowly, one angle at a time. Let's come back to this side view and go ahead and lay in the stomach area. So I'm observing this side angle, and you can tell that it's the side because the pelvis, if you imagine a line going through the pelvis, just like this line that you can see right there, when that's towards the side, then I know I'm looking at the side view, and I'm basing everything off of that pelvis, because it's much easier to understand where the pelvis is based on the bony landmarks of the body than to understand where the rib cage is or other anatomical features. So it's really like you're building the whole sculpture around that box of the pelvis, and that's your solid foundation, basically. Okay, so I'm coming and trying to build up where the stomach is, and also where the rib cage is coming out. If I need to thin things down, remember I want things to be thin so that I can add clay. So I might need to come in and just brush away or move some clay. Let's see. Somebody says, great, just registered today. That's awesome. Saludos desde México. Saludos todos los que están en México. Looking great. Everyone from Europe. Now I have 10 p.m. Very glad to see these live streams. Oh, wow. Yeah, that's not a terrible time. There was somebody saying it's 3 in the morning when your live streams are going to go on, and I wake up at 7, so I'm not going to be able to make it. Saludos desde Cuba. Oh, un cubano. That's awesome. Saludos. Okay. Yeah. So these live streams will be up afterwards, so you don't have to be here at the live stream. But I definitely appreciate everybody that is here during the live stream. Saludos desde Peru. Man, we have tenemos muchos que hablan español. We have a lot of Spanish speaking. I've been thinking about this. I need to reach out to Stan and just do a Spanish channel for sculpting, like maybe just translate all the videos from the English to Spanish, because I think that would be really useful for a bunch of people. Que estaba pensando que debería de hacer un canal en español donde tradujo las lecciones que tengo en inglés a español, pero tengo otras cosas que hacer, pero quizás voy a hacer eso un día. So maybe I'll do that one day to make new channels, which I think, a lot of channels, they do that. They do dubs and things like that. But it is helpful to have it in in many languages. But the only language I could do that for is Spanish, because that's the only other language I know other than English. Okay, so let's see. Let me take a second to just think about where I'm at, what I'm doing before I make any drastic life-altering mistakes. And I want the center line that represents the stomach to go through kind of the center of the figure. Let me draw in some guidelines since I erased those. There's the rib cage. Straight line through the rib cage. Straight line through the pelvis. Don't have any of your gesture or bending happen through those forms. All the bending should happen between those forms. These are like this is like the structure, and you want everything else to go around that. From Brazil, oh awesome, brasileño. I don't speak Portuguese, but it's very similar. Portuguese is very similar to Spanish. To me, it just sounds like somebody speaking Spanish that doesn't know how to speak Spanish. But I imagine that maybe if you speak Portuguese, that it sounds like somebody that's trying to speak Portuguese but doesn't know Portuguese. So, but yeah, welcome. That's awesome that we have so many people from all over able to participate in these live streams to see this. I mean, technology is amazing. We live in such a blessed time technologically, and maybe we'll destroy ourselves with the technology. We'll see, but I'm very grateful for it so far. We'll see. I don't know. AI's got everybody nervous because it seems like we're just putting the worst of humanity into a AI system, or the worst like principles of humanity. So it's kind of like it's like the spirit of humanity, but without any conscience to guide it. So that is a little bit creepy. But for the most part, so far, grateful to have so much technology. Montenegro, Southeast Europe, awesome. And somebody's asking if there are other people from France. Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so now I'm feeling pretty good. What time are we at? So we got about 20 minutes left. So you can see I took my time building out these high points. This is what it's looking like right now. And now I'm going to start to, again, fill in the safe areas, just like I did with the stomach, adding clay in between the rib cage and the pelvis. I'm going to do that same thing and start to build out the cylinder of the legs, the mass of the glutes, and then I can start to go in and add in the anatomy with little tiny coils of clay. So let's go ahead and start doing that. So I'll maybe start from the front view, and we're just filling in the areas between those high points. And you can see how fast this goes once you have those high points in place. I just take some clay, put it in between those, and I'm trying not to go past those high points, because I still want to see, like when I was looking at it from this angle, where were those high points taking place, and I still want to keep an indication of that, or somewhat of an indication of that. So with this, you can see as I lay in the pieces of clay, it's okay to go with the direction of the form as I'm laying it in, but then later, and especially once I start working with tools, then I'm going to try to come around the form more, because that helps you find the roundness of the forms a little bit better. If all of the tool marks and everything are coming in the direction of the forms, then it just makes it look amateur. I don't know why that is, but if I just like lay in pieces of clay and then scrape along the direction of the leg, it doesn't feel like it has that roundness that gives the sculpture a lifelike suppleness or softness. But I am gonna start thinking about the anatomy. So there's kind of a mass here inside the lower leg that's pressed back a little bit. So I'm gonna just add a little bit more mass here, and then I might come and just say like that there's this is the where the transition between that mass is on this inside part, where that muscle comes and wraps around the leg to the knee. Gonna add some mass to the knee. Let's do the same thing on this side. Well, let's see. Let's actually, yeah. So here is negative space. And then I'm seeing that this high point, and I want this to be at the high point, it's actually a little bit closer to the outside of the leg here. And then it kind of moves inward, this form. So I'm just filling in that negative space. So that's, you know, it's coming along. It's coming along. I'm liking this sculpture so far. And you know, I can't emphasize enough just breaking it down, small parts, taking one of those parts at a time, and try not to get overwhelmed. Try to just take it one step at a time. Yeah, let's see. AI won't do traditional sculpting for us right now, so that's cool for us. Yeah, yeah. There was a meme that I shared about that where like everybody, all these artists that are like that do design and stuff, they're all freaking out and everybody's going crazy. But then traditional artists that do like traditional work or gallery work or sculpting, they're just kind of like on the sidelines just watching, and it is kind of true. But I think just like how, like if you have like planes can self-drive, basically like a lot of what planes do nowadays is just it's like a program that's run, but you still have a pilot there to kind of guide things. So I think that's what will happen even in the arts and other things. Like you'll still want somebody that has a good artistic taste to guide whatever's happening with AI. So, and I think as long as like legally you have to say like, by the way, this was created with AI, then automatically there will be a higher value that's placed on things that weren't generated or created through AI, just because people realize that, oh, that required more work and that was an actual person that put in that work. It wasn't some program. So we'll see about that. But I definitely think, you know, that the process of creating is a human, it's like a human necessity, a drive, especially for those that have, you know, that are artistic. It's like a need that we have to be creative. And so I think, you know, more people should, hopefully what it does is it allows more work to be done so that more people can do creative things like build things and things like that and learn how to sculpt. That's my hope. But maybe we'll see what actually happens. But yeah, for right now we're safe. Us traditional sculptors are safe from the, you know, eventually, you know, I mean right now they have 3D printers and you have machines that can take a 3D image and then cut things out of stone and things like that. So, but I think we still need human artists, definitely. Let's see. I'm gonna come. So I'm starting to think more about the anatomy and where the shadows are, where the forms are, as I'm building out the cylinders of the leg. But I definitely want to keep it more simple. Try not to get too complex too fast. Somebody's saying in Spanish, sí, realmente me gustaría poder ver los videos con audio en español. Sería más cómodo porque primero que tengo que leer y luego retroceder para ver el video. Gracias. Yeah. Sí, me gustaría hacerlos en español. Yeah, they're just saying that it is hard to watch in a foreign language, and I imagine that it is because then you have to like read kind of what's happening. The translation might not be that great, depending on depending on where you are or what language you speak. And so hopefully I'll be able to do some videos in Spanish, translate some of the videos to Spanish. That would be a cool thing. Somebody says greetings from Andalusia. That's awesome. Hello from Lebanon. That's so cool that we have so many people all around the world sculpting. Hopefully you guys are sculpting. Hopefully you guys will sculpt. Maybe you're not sculpting while watching this, but I hope that afterwards you go through and you're like, oh, okay. It doesn't look that hard what he was doing, so let me go try to do it. I'm going to turn to the back and work on the back for a little bit. What time we got? We still got a little bit. So I'll probably go a little bit over an hour because I do have things that I wanted to accomplish each day. That is something that I definitely recommend if you're interested in sculpting or any artistic endeavor. It really does help to have a list of things that you want to accomplish and then just put like times when you're gonna, like how long that's gonna take you to do, and then just stick to the timeline. So for this, I wanted to build up most of the mass of the sculpture today so that tomorrow I can start thinking about the anatomy and things like that. But to do that, I need to build up a skinny version of the figure, so that's what I'm working on today. And I'm trying to decide how much of the box of the pelvis I want to build on top of. Let's see, this kind of comes right there. We have this very soft in this back area, so you can't see. Sometimes you see the dimples that are caused by the top of the sacrum. I think they're called the dimples of Venus, something like that. And those are just let you know where the sacrum is, and that's kind of the top of this box of the pelvis. I'm not seeing too much of that, but you can just, and this is, and I feel like from this angle she's more upright, but that's okay. I'm gonna have it. I like it a little bit more difference in the angle of the rib cage and the pelvis. In reality, it's a little bit more straight up and down, but that's fine. If you're gonna err on the side of making it more interesting, and don't err on the side of making it more simple. Hello from Ukraine. Oh, awesome. I think Stan Prokopenko was from Ukraine originally, if I'm not mistaken. Okay. Gonna come in and just filling in these inside areas with pieces of clay. One piece of clay at a time. Just slow and steady. Slow is fast when it comes to sculpting, because when you're taking your time, making sure that everything's accurate before you move on, you're gonna have to redo less work later on. And I'll probably mess up some things as I'm adding in the space in between the high points that I've laid out. That's okay. I'll come and fix things in a little bit and make sure that everything's thin enough to where I can build up the anatomy a little bit slower. So I'll probably remove at least some of the mass that I'm putting on right now to be able to more accurately define those high points with a thinner figure. I really like how this ankle comes. It's like swoops down. It's got a great gesture to it. An ankle, and kind of pushes towards the outside, and then there's like a pinky toe that's coming off. That's really interesting. It's It's a really cool detail. Then I'm gonna go ahead and come in, add some of the mass of the glutes, the bottom, there. And sometimes, because I'm sculpting thin, you know, when you're sculpting thin, it makes it look like things are too long, and so you make things a little bit shorter because you think, oh, like if I'm measuring it from side to side, then it looks like the glutes need to be about this height, but really they need to be, everything needs to be stretched out a little bit as you're sculpting thin. So a lot of the times I just need to like realize, oh, the glutes need to come down a little bit more. And so I want to make sure that I have an accurate height when it comes to the mass of the buttocks, bottom, the glutes, and some mass inside here. Okay. And let's do the So now I'm just coming, now I'm going to start just kind of smoothing this out, get the more accurate version of these forms. I can think a little bit about the secondary forms, that's the anatomy, but the primary form is a cylinder, so I want to make sure that I have something like a cylinder established first. And I'm also thinking, when I'm building out these walls of clay, I'm thinking, is that wall, like I'm seeing the silhouette, but is that wall more towards the back of the body or more towards the front of the body? Because that's an important thing to pay attention to. Because, for example, the high point of this right here is closer towards the back of the leg, because it's this muscle that's coming out to give this little bump around the knee, and that is close to the back of the leg, whereas some of it, like this inner part of the leg, that might be more in the middle, or maybe even some parts might be more towards the front. So just thinking about, like, not just what does the outline look like, but is that outline closer to the back side of the body or closer to the front? That's a really helpful thing to keep in mind as you're building out these walls of clay to represent the forms that you're trying to build. And then there's this ankle that comes out quite a bit. I want to make sure I get the gesture of that coming forward. Something like that. Keeping things thin. And just slowly building out the sculpture. Now I can start to change. I might start changing angles a little bit more to see kind of the 3/4 view. Up to this point right here, I've really just focused on the front view, the back view, and the side views. So just four angles. That's really what you want to focus on for establishing the structure and for the first little bit. But then once you get those down, then you can start to think about the other angles and start to build out the other angles. Then I'm trying to make sure that the knees, the knees are thinner than the other areas, but they're not super thin. That's a common mistake, is making the knees too thin so that they just look like, the legs just look like balloons, where it just comes down and then pops out again. Greetings from Ukraine. Nice work. Thank you. I appreciate it. Hello. That's awesome that we have so many people from so many places. Let me see. I'm also going to come in and start to round off the mass that's coming to the back area. So just adding clay into this somewhat safe area. And same thing, I see that this is kind of a safe area. You see, I haven't worked that much on the arms or the head. So I think, you know, my main focus for today has really been most of the mass of the body. So a lot of the mass is in the legs and the torso. That's what I've been focusing on. But depending on your workflow, you might establish things differently. This is just how I like to work and how I recommend to students that they work, is to build up the structure first, and then the primary forms, and then slowly start to build things on top of that. But I can come, you know, maybe I'll come and start to add some of the thickness of the arms a little bit, this shoulder coming here, then the muscles of the forearm might come around like that. And really these are just to indicate where things are happening. At the forearm, I want to say, like, okay, this is where, you know, that the elbow is, this is where the tricep is. Those different things, different areas. Let's see. Gonna come up and give an indication of where the shoulder is on this side, because that's kind of an important feature. So the shoulder comes up and wraps, and it connects to the arm a lot further down on the humerus than we think. Usually we think that or at least I think that the shoulder kind of ends kind of down here, but it's actually the middle of the humerus, or the bone of that upper arm. So it comes up quite a bit. We want to make sure we lay that in, and then I'll just give, you know, some indication of some of these things, like the bicep on this side, and then the tricep stretching down here. But I'm doing the same thing that I was doing on the legs, of just kind of thinking about it from one angle. But you can also be thinking about the anatomy as you're doing that. Gonna come into the back of the head. There we go. That's looking pretty good. See, I still feel like there's some mass missing here on the inside of the leg, so I'm just going to come in here, add some more mass to that inside part of the leg. Same thing right here. And I know where to, because I built that wall up, I know where to stop when it comes to adding that mass, and to round it off towards that high point of the wall from the side view. And as I'm doing this, you know, things get messed up, so I'll need to come back and redo things, but having those walls in place is definitely helpful. This model has strong calf muscles. You can see with that foot that's up, very, you know, she has a soft figure, but very strong in the lower legs. So I want to capture that, and some of the high points, like the calf kind of changes angles when it transitions to the soleus here on the back. part of the leg. So I'm kind of laying that in to give an indication of that. Then the high point of the calf is more towards the back, so I'm just going to add some clay here and then move that high point further back on the leg. And we got the mass of the soleus, which is the muscle underneath the calf muscle, or the gastrocnemius, I think, is the muscle of the calf. I'm going to add some of that. And maybe I'll thin this out just a little bit. So I want to err on the side of keeping things too thin, too skinny. That's where we want to err right now, because it's a lot easier to add clay to create those forms than to create the forms by removing clay with a tool. Let's go ahead and come in and add some more mass on the glutes. And the glutes taper, they kind of taper towards the back. So the widest point of the pelvis is going to be more towards the front. And then the glutes are going to kind of taper or get smaller as it moves backwards. Going to come in, and now I can start to add pieces of clay along the direction of the muscles as I'm working, like this one right here with the oblique muscle that kind of wraps around and then is absorbed into this lower back fat, or the soft lower back fat area. And so very soft everywhere in here, softened quite a bit. And then there is kind of a, the glute comes out a little bit towards the gluteus medius, that's kind of right here. So as I'm looking at it from this kind of 3/4 view, I want to make sure that I'm getting those high points accurate. I also feel like this needs to come in a little bit more with that the rib cage tucks in a little bit more. So I'm just gonna remove some clay there. And a little bit more mass over here. Let's see, we've been an hour and 7 minutes, I think, is about what we're at right now. Let's go ahead and we'll go to 15, and we'll see what I can get done in the next 7 minutes or so. And that way we've reached the goal for the day. Well, whether we've reached the goal or not, that's the time's up. Got to move on, get on with our day, our lives. But I'll give myself an hour to an hour and 15 minutes every day, and we'll see what I can do in that time. Like I'm saying, sculpting is like the marathon running of art, just because it does take time to develop things. And I'm a pretty quick sculptor. Like this sculpture right here. So what have we done? We've done 2 hours of the actual sculpting, not counting the armature, but 2 hours of building clay, and most of the mass of the sculpture is in place. So it's still, it needs the details and everything, but as far as mass goes, I probably don't need that much more clay. I got out a bunch of clay because I knew I'd be adding clay, a lot of clay today, but there's not going to be that much more actual mass that's added. It's just going to be moving that mass around and like slowing things down. Here I'm seeing that there's needs some more mass in this back area for the shoulder and for the back. So I'm just coming in pieces of clay and then pressing those in, spreading it around. So here's what it's looking like so far. I still have some safe area that I can fill in when it comes to to the stomach. So let me come over to this side and add just a little bit more. And for this, as I'm adding, I want it to go along with the shadows that I'm seeing, like where the mass of that stomach would be. There's kind of this mass of fat, subcutaneous fat, or the fat under the skin towards this belly area. There's kind of a shape here, and then the abdominal muscles are adding to that. So I'm going to come in and add clay, try to add clay in those areas where I'm seeing that, and then just filling in again those safe areas where I feel like, oh, there's plenty of room in these areas. Again, maybe I'll have the muscle of the waist is kind of wrapping around this way. So I might give more of an indication of that. Maybe I'll kind of put this, there's a little muscle that on the leg that's coming off of the pelvis right here. So I want to give an indication of that. So I am starting to think about the anatomy, like but I'm thinking about it in the sense that I'm thinking, where does the form begin? Like, where is that form going to, this mass of the leg, and laying in the anatomy that way, rather than thinking about what is how can I show that this muscle is, like, exactly what this muscle is doing. How can I show people how much I know about this muscle? Like, I'm not thinking about that so much as I'm not trying to sculpt an a-crochet or like a sculpture with all the skin removed. I just want to like have a good starting point when it comes to what's going on in with the muscles and where they attach, where those forms begin, and things like that. So, and then also quite a bit of softness here that I can add in. Safe area. And there is a little bit more fullness in this inside part of the leg. And that comes down, and the high point from here kind of travels from the outside part towards the inside part, the highest point that we saw when we were looking at it from this side view. So as I'm adding mass, I just kind of want to give an indication of that the muscles are kind of moving down in this direction. Let's see, and I want to see kind of what's happening in these areas too. I see that this is a safe area, that there's very soft, everything's very soft. Don't make the mistake of making the transitions between the forms or between the muscles too abrupt, especially in a female figure. There's just a lot of softness, and if you're able to like look at the figure, like take a section of the figure and then see the transition between those forms, it's a lot softer than what we think. So we want to get that softness as we're building the forms of the anatomy and everything else, especially on the female figure. Very soft. Let's see, what are we at? Okay, so that's it for today. We've come to the end of the sculpture. at this point. So here's where I'm going to leave it for today. Let me give you just a turnaround to see that. Remember that you can find the sponsors in the links below. If you want to know the judging criteria, you can find that on my main channel, the Andrew Joseph Keith channel. Today was just building up most of the mass of the sculpture. Tomorrow I'll continue with the mass and start to focus in on the anatomy and placing all that anatomy, and we'll see where we get to tomorrow. Thank you guys for watching. I appreciate it. Stay productive, stay creative, and I'll see you in the next one.